Obsessive. And we're live. It is Friday, the 7th of November, year of our Lord 2025. It is 8 o'clock a.m. And, I want to continue my savage and inappropriate attack on a cartoon character mascot. Um, because as Holly Berkeley Fletcher was saying just before we went live, this is all symptomatic of a larger societal malaise in which we cannot admit to ourselves that we do not have a 1,000-day streak going on. We have a 14-day streak going on. And we cannot admit to ourselves that we are a B student. We have to be, all the children have to be above average. And we cannot admit to ourselves that we are, you know, adequate, normal people who don't practice our languages every day. We have to pretend that we are on a 1,000-day streak. And I want to say to you, Duo the Owl, that you are a green motherfucker and and a physical manifestation of this psychological problem. Um,
It's okay.
I'm not holding back. Duo doesn't have feelings. He's not real. I'm just allowed to attack him.
Wait, aren't they arguing in California that AI has feelings and rights and stuff and should be treated like a human,
But
even
is
though we haven't
Duo
been treating
even
humans human?
isn't is Duo even an AI? Duo is a green
Hold on. I have like
mascot
2 minutes left that I have to get till I get to my 20 minutes. So
thing. All right, we have here an actual Duolingo obsessive. She has so Alicia has a 1,400-day streak that only has one it's only fake for one of those days because I think it involved crossing the international date line. And so she's one of the rare people who has a legitimate Duolingo streak going. But the point is, and this is just the only point, we don't need a disinformation green owl who is feeding us lies about ourselves. I mean, I want to know how many days in a row I have practiced. I don't want it mucked up. I don't want the sale of indulgences from Pope, what was it, Leo, I guess. You know, I don't want that.
The current one, just to be clear.
No, 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 no. The current Catholic Church is very strong, very good on the sale of indulgences. It has some other problems, but it's left that one in the past. Duolingo, by contrast, is a positively 1519 era kind of, needs somebody to tack 99 theses on the walls. So I am just uh I really want people to understand that I actually do feel strongly about this. And if Ev were here, she would verify that whenever my streak ends, I send her an image of the first streak freeze in order to have accountability to somebody that my streak ended. And and then we wait together for Duo to acknowledge that the streak is over and it proceeds to cheat on my behalf. Wait, hold that up again, Alicia, because we can't see it. Wait, hold it up. Move it over slightly. Yeah, there we go. Uh, Alicia has a higher Italian score than I do. And that's okay with me. I don't, yeah, and she's almost done with her November quest. And we're going to talk all about Duolingo today,
Oh boy.
and all of its quirks because it is a very funny and very odd little instrument that has virtues and vices. I'm not saying it's all vice, but one of the vices, guys, is that little green motherfucker who is just a problem. And he's there to tell you that you're better than you really are. And I don't want to tell you that you're worse than you really are. I don't want to tell you no, you didn't accomplish the 16-day streak. But I don't want to pretend you have a 1,000-day streak like Alicia when you in fact have a 16-day streak like me. Now I've done
Well,
some
I'll
other things in those 1,000 days that Alicia hasn't done, but I haven't practiced as much Italian as she has, and I don't want a little green cartoon character telling me that I have. Wait. We gotta pin you so that people can see that. Yeah, this is a 1,700-day streak, and with one day as an exception, it is an honest streak.
Hey, I have thoughts, but I beg you to end the monologue so I can remove the cacti.
Okay, all of which is a long-winded way of saying that, um, you know,
No, the sun is shining.
the
Yeah.
sun is shining. The
It
birds
is
are
here. It's not
chirping.
shining where I'm going.
Although I do want to point out that the birds, when they're duo, are chirping about the length of your streak falsely, and the cactuses have an important message for you.
You're watching Dog Shirt TV, a forking revolution in morning television.
You are watching
One
Dog
of
Shirt
them
TV, and it is
malfunctioned
a
still.
goddamn revolution in
What
morning
is that
television. And
sound?
one of the revolutionary features, guys, is that I knew just that if I wrote a piece attacking Duo, that first of all, people on the show would have Duolingo grievances. And it took exactly 7 minutes for Richard Wattenbarger to show, whom I've never spoken to about Duolingo before, to show up on the screen with a note that says, I have many Duolingo grievances. So we're gonna get to that. And I just knew sometimes your listenership, and I just knew that this post was gonna touch a nerve. Another one of the revolutionary features, and there are a bunch, I assure you, is that yesterday I was having a cup of coffee, or to be precise, a cup of sparkling water with Alicia Wanless, and we started talking about Duolingo grievances, and we bonded over how much we hate the stupid characters in the Duolingo stories and the radio shows. And so,
And
some
Match Madness,
and
Match
Match
Madness, which
Madness, which
triggers my
is
anxiety.
an abomination in the sight of God. And we are going to go over all of our Duolingo grievances today. And you, who has maybe never really thought about the fact that you have Duolingo grievances, are going to participate. So pop up on screen if you have Duolingo grievances. If
I'm gonna
you
go back to bed. I don't have significant ones, but my main contribution this morning, if this is the topic, is that I have an alternative. Um, I have an alternative. So there's an app called Streaks that I use. You make your own goals. It's not language. It can be anything. It can be language if you want, but it can be anything. And it is the anti-Duolingo in the fact that if you haven't, I got a note yesterday from one of them, and it was very patronizing. It said, you haven't been doing well on this one. Maybe you should reduce the time. Like I had a 10-minute stretching. One of my goals is 10 minutes of stretching a day, and it popped up, and it's like, maybe we should reduce that to 9 minutes because you're not doing very well.
Well, I like that. I like
Okay,
that.
well, it's called Streaks.
Um, Yeah, but they're honest streaks. Like if you miss a day, it doesn't pretend you have.
No, it cuts you off. Although it does have a feature, an option. If you did the streak, but you went to bed and forgot to check it off, it'll pop up the next day and be like, hey, do you
Did you
want to
do?
do this for yesterday or you missed yesterday?
Oh,
But
that's
you
nice.
but you
But
can say like, I didn't know, I missed
but
yesterday.
can I get it to interface with Duo so that its AI tells Duo's AI, stop telling me I have a 750
I
day
don't think
streak
so,
because I don't.
but you could set
I
up.
am I am the actual Streaks app, and I'm telling you, green guy, that Wittes is not at 750. He's at 68.
I mean, you would it all be manual, and it would be all. The thing with streaks is it's like on your honor, but it will, like, I mean, if you want to lie to it, you can. It's
No,
not
I
like
don't
you.
want to lie to it, but
Okay,
the
we'll set you
critical
can.
thing is I don't want it to lie to
It
me.
won't lie to you. Like if you set it, you can set a streak in the app of doing Duolingo and check it off every day that you do Duolingo. And then if you didn't do Duolingo, you don't check it off, and it'll cut you back down to zero. And then after a time, it'll probably say,
Are you sure you want to be
you're
doing this
not
with
doing
us?
well
Because you
at
don't
this.
seem committed.
You don't seem committed. It tells me I have a one of them is to this is granted, this is a wildly unrealistic goal for me, but I put in there that I want a goal of calling my parents once a week. Right now I call them like once every 2 months. So anyway, and it is shaming me quite a bit. I'm gonna have to delete it because it's too triggering. I'm either that or I'm gonna have to go back into therapy because I mean, let's be honest, I'm not calling my parents once a week. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, look, folks, we're gonna spend the day on Duolingo grievances. We're gonna hear Richard's, and then Alicia's got a lot of them, and we're gonna talk about those. If
And all
you
due respect, I think I'm gonna just listen because I don't have
That's
big
okay.
thoughts.
You can click on your streaks that you did in Dog Shirt TV today. I know you have a streak going for that you're, trying to. But this, if you show up for the start of the show and do the cactuses, you
Okay.
get to click on streaks that
All
you
right.
did the
Well,
show.
I'm gonna do mic and camera off, but I'm gonna stay on. But I'm gonna go sit in bed because
You're
my
a great
back is
American,
happier
Hollis
there.
Barkley Fletcher.
Your back's hurting again?
No,
Richard
it's just
Wattenberger,
no, it's fine. It's I don't like this chair. I prefer to lay in bed. So
what language do you study or languages do you study on Duolingo?
Some that I kind of already know, but I'm trying to get a sense of the idiomatic use of, I learned a lot of languages for reading, which is, of course, not the same as learning them for speaking. So I've been doing German and French, both of which I've actually studied for a while, but and then Italian, which I had a reading course on years ago, and uh, forgot a lot. And those are the main ones. I
Mhm.
started on Russian, but it was too much with the other languages that I was doing. So I'm going to go back to that late. I'm almost actually through the German that they have, and almost through the Italian, and then I'm going to go back
How
to the
many
Russian.
levels do they have in German and Italian?
Let me tell
They
you.
I think it goes up to beginning of B1, so it's five different levels right now, and I think they have three or four in Italian. French, they go like French and Spanish are the two that they have the most
Right,
um, in for English speak. What Alicia's?
Italian goes to 4 plus refresh.
Oh,
right.
right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, um, but
Yeah, I finished the Ukrainian course and I do the refresh sometimes, but it's not the same.
French
yeah.
Um,
has 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what are your grievances?
Oh boy, where do I start? Well, like you, I have actually, I have a very long, well, not like you. I have a very long dishonest streak, but I also have, excuse me, I have an honest streak that I don't know how long it's going, which is kind of frustrating.
Isn't that frustrating that
It
you
is
cannot get
extremely
a straight
frustrating.
answer from the green motherfucker
I
about you want to know how many days you've actually done it, and unless you correspond with Eve Gaumont and send her your honest streak data, you're kind of screwed.
well, I could reset. I could do what I did, what you've done, and reset my dishonest streak, but I, I, I can't. Well, here's the other thing. I've gotten hooked on the gamification part of it, and so I'm always, um, I, I'm, pathologically addicted to the leaderboard in my group.
Oh, I hate the leaderboard, Richard.
It's terrible, and I can't, I can't stop looking at it. Um, It's like it's like leaderboard porn or something. Um, and
I am so like I want to do two lessons and only two lessons in each of my six languages every day. That's my goal. And so very slow, steady progress in six languages every day. And I want to actually have an honest accounting. What I would actually like is a function where Duo does an honest streak of did I practice any language at all, and then an honest streak where I get to set my goals, two lessons in each of the six languages, and it gives me an honest answer to how many days in a row I've done that. That would be super, super valuable for me. But this, like, the whole, like, you have to take a week off now because you missed one day and I'm going to lie to you otherwise. I don't want that.
You don't have to do that. Like you could just ignore it.
No, but
yeah,
Like Richard and I
as
could
Ev
ignore
will
the
tell you, it
leaderboard.
really stresses me out.
the metaphysics of it, it's just like the universe demands that you know um that you have an honest streak and
But
or live with the consequences.
but what if you had two accounts? Like one for the regular streaks and the other one for the cheating days, and like so you kind of start to build up a new streak on the other account, but
The problem is that
It's a lot of work.
it's not
well, he texts
it's not
me. It
expensive
takes
to
some
use
doing.
Duolingo, but it's not free either. Um
Oh, you have to
and
pay for that?
well, it is a private company that has to make money, and so they have certain subscriber only content that includes, most of, some of the higher value learning materials, and so I'm happy to pay for them. I think it's a very good product on the whole. I just don't like the feeling of being patronized to and told that they're told that I'm Alicia when I'm clearly not Alicia.
Yeah,
What's
I
wrong
don't
with
want to
being
be the
Alicia?
problem.
There is nothing wrong with being Alicia if
I
you
think it was being reliable, isn't it? What it was?
have. Okay, so Richard, what are your other grievances?
Well, so mine are really picky. I get really picky about all these bonus points. The or the boosts. So earning triple points and things like that. I told you I'm addicted to the leaderboard, and um, so I know how to maximize points. What first of all you have to do it in the morning and the evening to get. You have to do it in the morning between 6 and noon, and between 6 and midnight in the evening, in or first, so that you can get those special. What are they called? Night. Or you
Yes,
get these.
roosters.
Yeah, yeah, and then you have to do your daily three challenges to get your to get triple points the next day. The problem with the triple points is that they kick in automatically when you log in the next day. So
Spelling done this.
so if you so like if you're, for example, you're up late at night and you're like it's like 11:55 and you said, well, I'm gonna keep my honest streak going, and you keep your honest streak going, and all of a sudden the clock turns to midnight and you get your triple points, but you have to use them then, your triple
Yeah,
boost.
that is
And
a hardship.
Or
Um,
and
Duolingo tricks you and it sends you a notification and you think you can just go into the app and see what the notification is, and they're like, no, you haven't done your lesson and now your triple time is like your triple points are locked in and you have to do everything now. I hate it. I removed notifications for that reason.
you just
And then
disappeared, Alicia.
did I? Why? It's telling me to turn on reactions. I hate traveling. I'm done with it. I the Then it starts me into using it right away. Now I lost my train of thought. I removed notifications. That's what I did, so it couldn't trick me anymore. And then I almost lost my streak because I forgot to do Duolingo that day.
All right, so here's the question. We are three basically psychologically healthy people.
Oh, that's debatable.
Um,
It's debatable over here.
um,
And if Richard and I are being triggered by being demoted by like a gamified language
well,
learning
so
app, I've got
here's
questions
my
about
question.
us.
Is Duolingo having these effects on people in general, or is it just like some weird set of neuroses shared by the three of us? Because I want to get to Match Madness for a minute because
oh,
it
Eat
dramatically
Match Madness.
oppresses both Alicia and me, and we didn't know that about each other until yesterday. So, Alicia, tell us what Match Madness is and why it is driving you to psychiatry.
So it's like a stupid sidebar feature that sometimes they insist on putting into the 3 challenges per day. And I, like Richard, have to get that. And then I want my 3 times the points. So I do it in the morning. This is why I was late, because it stuck me doing 20 minutes of lessons this morning before the show. But Match Madness is like they have like cards. What are
Flashcards.
what do you flashcards with words, and you have to match it with the language. And if you do it perfectly, you can get this like crazy high, again, another fucking streak that I get locked into. And because I have a problem with perfectionism, I have to get it perfect and I have to beat the time. And it's got a clock, so like you only have a certain amount of time and it gets harder and harder. They give you less and less time the further along the Match Madness levels you get. And it's anxiety inducing. Yes, you can use timer boosters, but I don't want to use timer boosters because then I'm wasting all the stupid gems that I have accumulated in 1700 days.
Yeah, so I am very sympathetic to this. I don't do Match Madness ever. And I'm willing to give up the gamification points for it because Match Madness stresses me out. And number two, and more importantly, it violates my rule that I want to do 2 and only 2 lessons from each language every day, not including the phone chats with one of the fictitious characters, which don't count as lessons. Um, and so I am, uh, I'm not, I've just decided to opt out of the Match Madness thing. So, guys, we want to hear from others in the chat and on screen. Do you use Duolingo? Are we just speaking gibberish to you? Or is there some other app that is driving you mad like Duolingo
No,
is?
I
Us.
had a question for Richard and now he's gone. And I
He'll
wanted to
come back.
know
Richard,
is,
come back. Alicia
is,
has a question
yeah.
for you. Um, yeah, are there other apps like this that have gamified learning to the point that it is um, screwing up your life? Richard, Alicia has a question for you.
Ist dein Hund arbeitslos?
ist wer arbeitslos?
Ist dein Hund arbeitslos? Das ist
Mein,
eine
mein
Frage.
Hund, äh, mein,
Yes.
meine Hunde arbeiten nicht. Äh,
This is one of the stupid questions in the German chat. It's not a
ja,
question. It says, Mein Hund ist arbeitslos, which is my dog is unemployed.
yeah, my dogs are definitely are they don't work. They don't so they don't apply for benefits. They're not part of the statistics. Of course, we wouldn't know that anymore, right? So,
Well, I will say that there are some quirks. So, one of the things when you study many different Duolingo languages is that the Duolingo sample sentences are radically different and they're clearly written by completely different groups of people depending on the languages. So Hebrew Duolingo is absurdist. Uh, it's a lot of it is about animals and not like my dog doesn't work or my dog doesn't, but you know, uh, some of them are genuinely odd. Ukrainian Duolingo is really dark. They have sample sentences like, these people know how to find you. Which, like, I mean, I understand things are dark over there these days, but, sometimes when I was doing, Ukrainian Duolingo, unfortunately, there's not that much of it, and I finished the course. I would send Marichka the sample sentences, and we would really laugh over them. Um, and then, um, uh, but it also would have these like weird pearls of wisdom. Italian Duolingo is just
It's
radical.
normal.
It's so normal and boring and very much about food and
Yes.
shopping.
So much food and
So
how
much,
famous Italian dishes are.
right.
Yes, a lot of shopping,
Um,
a lot of
and
walking.
and then French and Spanish Duolingo are super normy, right?
No, no. French is obsessed with strikes, manifestation et les grèves. And
I
the and
haven't
the
gotten
and
that
the
far in
strikes
it
and the
yet.
protests. I finished the course. There's an inordinate amount of talk about strikes and protests.
Yeah. So I think sometime we should set up. I had this thing with Ev for a while that I was gonna do an entire post entirely in sample sentences from Duolingo. But the problem is that figuring out how they connect to each other would take a lot of time. But yeah. Oh, the other thing about Ukrainian Duolingo, which just I consider to be really about me, is that they have a lot of sample sentences about finding your way to the embassy, which just seems like it was written with me in mind. And so um, I like that. Um,
I feel like German leans towards the unemployed, but like weird things like your dog's unemployed and all, and they like to talk about die Hexe, like the witch. The witch is always there, and then of course we can't not remember or like bring up Finnish, which has a weird indexing for the wizard.
so yeah, I did finish Duolingo for a few weeks, and I got to tell you, it was too hard.
Hmm.
I could not. If Minna Olander or Auntie Ruokonen is listening to this, Finnish is too hard for me. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't remember the words. They're not cognates with anything in any language I've ever uh, you know, studied. It's just your language is too hard. I don't know how you speak it. And so I did it for a few weeks and then dropped it because, among other things, all Finns speak better English than I do. And so,
They
um,
speak the Finnish rally English is their joke.
what's Finnish rally English?
I guess they feel that there's a rally car driver who had some interviews, and then this became a thing about Finnish rally car rally English, which is like really short, heavily accented sentences in English?
Well, I love Finland. I have never met a Finn I don't like, and I'm not going to study Finnish anymore. Um, and but the sample sentences were really weird. A lot of them were about wizards. Um, anyway, that's all I got on Duolingo. Do you have more grievances?
Let's see.
I
I
have one
hate
other
the
grievance.
leaderboard. I hate being threatened with demotion. I hate the whole match madness. I hate being forced to do 20 minutes because of I hate the 3 challenges per day that I have to get because now I want the 3 times the damn points. I hate the preamble on the radio bits. Like, I don't want to hear the same shit over again. I don't care that what's her name? Lily doesn't want to talk to people. I don't want to talk to people either, but I don't need to hear you tell me how you don't want to talk to people, like I'm doing right now.
Right.
What else?
I hate the bear.
I'm not a big fan of the bear. I don't understand the noises that have to get made. Like, why does Eddie do something that sounds like "Bye" whenever you fail? And
Yeah.
then the whole like ding at the end of everything. It's just, I mean, if I could get off Duolingo, it sounds like crack now. I guess, okay, I have a family plan. And so I share this account with my husband and some friends so that they can have this upgraded experience. So I feel like I'll
The
be taking
bear
it
is
away from
Falstaff
everybody.
in all languages, and yet
Falstaff, he is
there's
in all
no
languages.
and yet resembles no in no way resembles Sir John Falstaff. So why? And by the way, sometimes he's actually a bear, like when he's doing his radio show, but sometimes he's a human who just happens to look like a bear. And so I just have a problem with the bear. Anyway, I
Yeah.
cut you off. I'm
And it's
sorry.
got that like dying fish on his desk
Right.
when it's the radio show. And the other thing I hate is the inconsistency. So you go through the entire course on French and then they have the refresh, and the refresh are like phrases you never had. But they're all like a test level. So you can't click on anything to like get some help, I don't think. I think it's all like you do or pass fail.
Yeah. So look, I mean, it's a good app. It's got many virtues. It actually does help you learn languages, particularly at the getting to a certain level of familiarity with the language level. Eventually, I do need a Ukrainian tutor. There's just no substitute for it, and I've been meaning to do that. But guys, fix the streak thing. Don't force match madness down Alicia's throat. It's not nice. Don't do that. Get rid of the god Lily complaining about how she has to socialize. We get it. She's a teenager and she doesn't like to hang out with people. We understand. We understand. The joke was funny the first time.
Oh, one
It's
other
not
thing.
funny the 300th time.
Junior, no means no.
That's right. Right? Junior is very pushy for a 7-year-old or whatever he is. Um, guys, that's all I got. Also, if you work for Duolingo, I'm actually serious about the honest streak thing. Just have a little button that lets you opt in to an honest streak. I don't need you to change it for everybody else, but it actually diminishes my enjoyment of the product. Give me an honest streak. Um, all right, the phones are open. That was my agenda. We covered it. Alicia got the Match Madness stuff off her chest. What is on any of your minds? Alicia, you're going home today.
I hope so, provided that your airports function.
Well, yeah, I mean that's an issue.
That's sad and dark all at the same time. Yeah, so I go home today to gray weather. It feels like winter started there. You have nice sunny weather in DC. And it
And we
almost all
will
feels
until
normal.
mid-December.
Right. Yeah. Okay,
This is
fine. Rub it
not
in. You can,
climate change induced. This is actually what our fall is like.
okay, you can have your nice weather. I'll have a stable government.
And look, we don't have nice weather in the summer. It's not, it's not like we have nice weather all the time. We have horrible weather starting in, late May and running through mid-September. But then we do have this delicious period into running into our very, very short winter. And it's kind of cool. And we don't have stable government.
Never experienced worse summer weather than I have experienced in July in DC. And I've been to Rome in July, and I mean it was bearable. Like, it was a nice dry heat, you could cope. But you guys, like, you bake and you boil at the same time. It's I don't even know how you survive.
Nravitsa, Nravitsa, you have to deal with. It's just like there's whatever, you
I
know.
almost walked into a fountain on the way to a meeting here in July once.
I did walk into the reflecting pool once. Um, and yeah, look, your um summer in DC, which I hate hot weather, and but I have come to like DC summers in a way of like that I think some people like fasting on Yom Kippur or, beating themselves with chains. That there's there's a side of it that is uh purging, and it is like a refiner's fire, I guess. And I always feel like I have accomplished something when I get through a DC summer. um and July in
You could
DC
just go to
is
a
just
sauna, get it over with easily, and like,
so. First of all, a sauna is pleasant. A sauna is not like, let's see how much you can take. Like DC, and by the way, when
oh,
you're in a sauna,
you're
you're
not doing it
sitting.
with Russians.
Yeah, when when you do a sauna, you're just sitting there. You don't have to go about your day. You're also not fully dressed.
Right,
Um,
right, fair,
and
fair.
so
I
there
had a
is
suit
something
on.
about being in a suit. Um, and by the way, women's business clothes, there are summer versions of them, but like a men's suit is really hot. Um, and there is only, I mean, yeah, you can make it with linen, but at the end of the day, if you are wearing a suit in the summer in DC, you are wearing way too much clothes. Um, and so I just want to say that I have learned to like it in the way that kind of like physical therapy. It's just something that you put your body through, and at the end of it, you are stronger. Carol T, good
I
morning. Do you use Duolingo?
no, I don't. And it sounds like I won't be starting either.
Have you ever used it?
Nope, nope.
Wow.
But my grandkids have, but nope.
Well, I actually, all jokes aside, all my complaints aside, though they are all sincerely felt, I do endorse it. I think it's a very good product. I have learned a lot from it. But they need to give me the honest streak. What is on your mind this
Can you
morning?
turn that off?
No. You actually, there are very few things you can turn on and off in Duolingo. It's remarkably, the experience of it is, pretty consistent from user to user. There aren't that many user serviceable, user toggleable features. And, you know, I I just, want a simple stop bullshitting me feature. It doesn't have to be like, look into my soul and tell me who I am. Just stop bullshitting me. What's on
I
your
mean,
So
this
mind
is
it's
this
like
like
a,
morning?
Fitbit in
go
the
away,
cardio
leave me
load.
alone feature. But I did actually have a kind of serious question. It's totally irrelevant to anything in this world, thanks to Scalia, but I did have a question. All right, a little bit of background. My retirement community, we have people give talks periodically. And one of the residents is a lawyer, don't know his specialty, who decided to give talks about the Constitution. And I missed several of them, but I got in with the beginning of the Bill of Rights. And the first thing he said that I thought was completely off was that the language is very simple and you don't need to be a lawyer to understand it. And I'm like, gee, that's really interesting. On account of, it seems to me, there's been lots of litigation clarifying it. But moving right along.
Well, no, both can be true at the same time. The language of the Bill of Rights is very simple, and you don't need to be a lawyer to understand it at a certain level. That said, the application of that language to different circumstances that have developed over time is a subject that has given rise to enormous litigation, particularly in the 20th century.
The
And
devil is in the details.
Right. And so to say that the language of the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable search and seizure, is simple sounding and doesn't answer the question of what an unreasonable search is, or even what a search is, or a seizure is, right? And those are questions that have to be developed in litigation. So the 2 points are actually easily reconcilable with one
Yeah,
another,
I just
in my
have
view.
probably an exaggerated idea of what understanding something means. But moving right along, um, he did say, I mean, the Second Amendment, um, he said that the Second Amendment gives wants people to have guns so that they can resist any incursion by the federal army. And I thought that didn't sound quite right. And
Okay, let's
I
let's
looked
do
at
a
the
brief.
wording, and it did say for the, I forgot exactly, but something about the sovereign state. So part of my question is, I wonder if it does. I mean, partly I would think it hinges on what you mean by state.
So state is not a particularly contested word in the Second Amendment. The states, when the Constitution refers to states, it is referring to the states that are parties to the Constitution.
Okay.
Um, the the interpretive give in the Second Amendment, I would say 97% of the dispute about the Second Amendment relates to three and only three questions. So the first is, how should we understand the prefatory clause in relation to the substantive right? So the substantive right is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But there's this phrase that appears in front of it, which is a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, comma, pardon me if I got one or two of those words
Right, right,
wrong.
right.
Um, and so the question is, does the prefatory clause merely set up the right, explain the reason for it, or does it in some sense limit the right? That's question number one. Question number two is the phrase the right of the people describing a collective right? Because it's not it doesn't say, the right of free speech shall not be infringed, right? Which would imply an individual's right. It's sort of describing the people, right? So what does the people mean in relation to the individual character of the right versus is it a right that, the people means each and every one of the people? And then the third question is, what is an arm? Um, so, you know, is to keep and bear arms, does that mean a musket? Does that mean any kind of weapon you might want to bear? Um, say a nuclear weapon. Nobody thinks it means that, but why not exactly, right? What about a cannon, which was available at the time. So what does it mean to have a right, if you assume it's an individual right, to keep and bear arms? Also, what are the contours of reasonable regulation of that right? Is it none? As in, is it like the First Amendment that you have a right to it and there are extreme situations where the government can infringe it? Or is it something more like, yeah, there's a presumption that you have a right to do it, but if the government has a really good reason, like say that too many guns in cities cause a lot of people to get killed, um, right? So what is it? What is the substantive contours of the right as against other legitimate government interests? I think those are the three questions that account for nearly all, not all, but nearly all of the interpretive disputes over the Second Amendment. There are some other more esoteric ones, but
Historians like to look at the meaning of bear arms.
yes, right. And there are current questions if you have the right to keep arms. Is there an open carry right? Because bearing them is actually part of the substantive, or a concealed carry. Because, uh, so like these are nuanced differences. But what I would say is, if
But
you're a
it's also a matter of what bearing arms meant in the 18th century.
correct. And so is the right a right to keep and bear arms, which or is there a right to keep arms and a right to bear arms, which are sort of two different rights? More, again, to go back to the First Amendment analogy, a right to free speech and of the press, right, and of assembly, right? These are all interpreted to be different rights. So I mean, I think there's um, look, I actually think the interpretation of the Second Amendment is a super interesting question, and I don't think the answer is that there is no individual right in it. I think the text of it is actually pretty clear that there's some individual right in it, but it is a right in support not just of militia service, but militia service as a feature of federalism. That is, the ultimate interest in that prefatory clause is an interest in the state's interest of freedom vis-a-vis the federal government. And so I think the best way to understand the Second Amendment is partially as a federalism amendment. Um, so I think it's super complicated, and I think lots of people like to make the Second Amendment simple. I think it's actually more interesting than that, and um, I don't have a deep-seated problem with Heller. I do have a deep-seated problem with some of Heller's progeny. Um, and it seems to me you do have to ask the question, if you believe there's an individual right that says the District of Columbia can't forbid gun ownership entirely, it doesn't really answer the question of what the contours of that right looks like. And I don't really know what I think the right answer to that question is. And a lot of that question turns on how we feel about changes in technology over time.
The reason I asked, or where part of my, again, I'm a historian, right? I'm not a lawyer in any way, shape, or form. And I recognize that the law has some very distinct features. But at the time, the militias were the way that the country defended itself. I mean, there was a very small federal standing army, but for instance, in the War of 1812, they really relied a lot on the militias. And also, according to Alan Taylor's book, The Enemy Within, I think he was talking about, I don't remember if it was Maryland or Virginia, but that part of the problem with the state militias was that you were supposed to have your own gun. And although many people had been issued guns in previous times, they hadn't maintained them because they
Right.
didn't really use them. And so they didn't have guns that worked. And so, it's sort of from that lens that I've been looking at the Second Amendment to really understand what the basis behind, what the big point was, whether it was because of an actual fear of federal incursion, or did it also relate to the defense of the republic?
So
Yeah,
chiefly,
am I clear enough? You realize where I'm?
yeah, you're absolutely right. So there's multiple defense issues, right, that the Second Amendment clearly has in mind. One of them is an incursion by the proto-federal government and a standing army, right? So they just had a experience of the British quartering soldiers forcibly in people's house. The adjacent amendment to the second is the Third Amendment, which bans quartering of soldiers in peacetime without compensation, right? And so they're interested in protecting the militia and restricting the capacity of standing armies to be tyrannical. That's factor number one. Factor number two is Indian attacks. There are communities, particularly on the frontier, where the militia was the defense, and we all don't think we were the good guys in retrospect, but they thought they were the good guys, and they created um, institutions that were designed for communal defense in that regard. The third issue is state to state conflict. And remember that Maryland and Virginia almost go to war over navigation rights on the Potomac River. They were going, that would have been the respective militias of those communities. And so, but then there is this fourth issue, which is individual hunting and self-defense. And there's just no doubt in my mind that the founding era people considered your gun to be your business for that purpose, right? And so if we are and the requirements that people had guns for militia service is kind of a reflection of that. And to the extent that there are any regulations of that stuff in the founding era, it's all like, don't store your gunpowder in ways that can blow up the city of Boston. Kind of like, and there's a certain amount of that stuff, but it's not in any sense gun control as we understand it today, which is saying you may not have a weapon because we're afraid of what you're going to do with it. And one of the reasons for that is that the weapons weren't that threatening,
No, they weren't.
these are single shot muzzle loaded things. They take a minute to load once they've fired. And by the way, if you screw up, they'll backfire and kill you, right? They're fairly democratic weapons in a small d sense, which is not true of a, giant clip, high magazine, much less a bump stock, right? And so I think there are really legitimate technological questions. There are really legitimate. But look, I have, over the last 8 years, spent a lot of time dealing with people who have genuine security needs, personal security needs. Some of them have spent a fair bit of time on this show. And I have grown to be in an environment in which we are not going to disarm the motherfuckers. I have grown to be respectful of people's perceptions of self-defense needs. particularly people who are well trained and whose firearms are, I'm confident, not going to end up being used in suicides or in accidents or in, people who know how to handle weapons and so I have honestly very mixed feelings about the whole thing.
It is a very complicated question, and I meant to want to understand what went into the creation of the amendment, and what it meant on that level. And my offhand remark about Scalia is just that it was a Supreme Court decision. It's, to some extent, for all practical purposes, the questions I'm interested in are irrelevant.
Correct.
And that
And
was all I meant by that.
I actually think that Scalia's opinion in Heller is reasonably responsible, as was Judge Silberman's opinion at the lower court level. Um, some of the subsequent cases, particularly Gruen, I think are very hard to defend. But I'm not, I, you know, I do think the other thing that really moves me in this discussion is if you go back to the second founding, the Reconstruction era, and where the 14th Amendment, which of course applies some and sort of abortively at first, the federal constitutional rights to the freedmen, or attempts to. The right that the freedmen are talking about most often, most passionately, is the right to defend themselves, to keep and bear arms, because
Of
they
course,
have to deal with the Klan.
of course.
And I cannot be too contemptuous of that. And so I don't, at the end of the day, I know how I feel as an urban American, where there's a certain amount of gun violence in my city. I also know that when I go visit my uncle who's been on this show, who lives in the backwoods in Montana, and you go to the bathroom in his house, there's a giant hunting rifle hanging on the interior door of the bathroom because that's where he hangs his hunting rifle. And by the way, he feeds himself by shooting an elk once a year or so. And so like I am also respectful of the fact that in North America people live very, very different lives, and that's legitimate. And um, I don't want to be disrespectful of the legitimate lives. There was that guy who, after I forget which mass shooting it was, when everybody was on a get rid of AR-15s kick, which, by the way, I don't really think there's a good reason for there to be a lot of AR-15s around. I'm not unsympathetic to that. But he wrote this very plaintive post. Um, it really is the most effective weapon for dealing with the feral hogs that are, what am I supposed to do about the feral hogs? And everybody came down on him like a ton of bricks, as though this was some kind of. And then he went on TV and said, actually, I'm not opposed to regulation, but I have a real feral hog problem in my community. They attack kids, they're really dangerous, and they come at you in very large numbers. And and the thing we all use to deal with them is AR-15s, because they can get off a lot of shots really quickly, which is, of course, exactly the reason why it's such a vile weapon in a different context. And he ended up, I thought he was very appealing, and he wasn't trying to be cheeky. He was dealing with a real problem in his real life. And I just think the whole conversation would benefit a lot if people, uh, first of all, if we could get the machismo out of the conversation. Like, I've spent a fair bit of time with guns in my life. There's no place for the machismo. Um, Second, if we could understand that a handgun in a city is a very different proposition from, that same weapon when you have a real legitimate self-defense need. And if we could all accept that rural communities have actual needs that are very different from urban communities and don't have the same gun violence problems, although they do sometimes have suicide and and accident problems. And so the actual problems are different. And I think if we could just have a responsible, serious, and respectful conversation about the role of guns in different parts of American society, it would help a lot. But I have no confidence that that is likely to develop.
I have a Swiss friend who always says, it's not the guns. Switzerland is heavily armed because everybody has to have a gun because of militia.
Right.
Right. And they don't have anything like these
And
problems.
they're machine guns, and they have to, every household has to have one
In
in a
working order.
particular type of box I mean, it's a complicated subject, and I don't want to, and
I
it's
wasn't.
been a no, I'm not saying you're not. It's been a complicated subject since the founding era, and I don't think it admits of simple answers. Folks, it is
Thank you.
9:01, which means we have already gone over a minute. We're going to be back on Monday. We're not going to be back on Tuesday because I'm going to be flying by that time to California. But we are going to be back on Monday. I don't know who the guests are going to be. I don't know who the hosts are going to be. Alicia's going to be back home by then, and she probably will be wearing a shirt of with some snarky message. You'll be there, and I'll be here, and it's going to be fun.